On his birthday, Orion took Caspian to the amusement park. I rushed to finish my work and got some popsicles, Caspian's favorite, before heading over. When I arrived, I saw Caspian leaning against Orion's assistant, Serafina, happily eating Haagen-Dazs. Caspian said, "Aunt Serafina, I wish you were my real mom. My mom is old and ugly, she can't compare to you at all." Caspian's words really hurt. I made up my mind not to compromise with anyone anymore. So, I submitted my application for the Western Development Plan. If they don't need me, I'll go where my homeland does, to help the families and kids who are suffering. In the office, Talia was staring seriously at my application. "Caspian, have you really thought this through?" "I have thought it through. I know she has high expectations for me and sees me as a sort of little sister, which is why she worries." But I nodded without hesitation. I sighed and said, "Caspian, 10 years is a big deal. Once you make a decision, you can't go back. Are you really going to leave your husband and kids? What will happen to them if you go?" I smiled softly and shook my head, feeling a wave of gratitude as I looked at her. "I know the situation over there is tough, but I've made it through hard times before, so I'm not afraid of a challenge. Plus, that's my hometown. I'm part of the Western Port areas, and there are so many families and kids who still need help. Just like the slogan says, go west, go to where the country needs you. As for them, they don't need me anymore." Talia stood up, her eyes slightly red. She patted my shoulder and spoke earnestly. "Caspian, I didn't misjudge you. You really are a good kid. I'll always support you. Take these 3 days to say goodbye to your family properly. If you need anything, just reach out to me anytime." Talia didn't push me anymore. She understood that once I made my decision, I wouldn't change it. As I stepped out of the office, I looked up at the sky. What I saw was an endless expanse of blue, just like the vibrant and hopeful future that lay ahead of me. When I got home and was about to step inside, I could hear laughter and happy voices from inside. Caspian exclaimed, "Aunt Serafina, your cooking is amazing. It's so much better than what my mom makes." Even though I'd heard such compliments many times before, they still stung a little each time. I took a breath, adjusted my feelings, and smiled as I opened the door. "I'm back!" Just then, the moment the door swung open, it bumped right into Caspian's head. I didn't even notice when he ran over. Suddenly, all the laughter stopped. Caspian was holding his head, wincing in pain. He angrily shouted at me, "What are you doing? Can't you see I'm right here?" I quickly apologized, wanting to check on him, and tried to gently pat his hand to see if his forehead was hurt. "I'm sorry, Mom, I didn't mean to. Let me see if I've scraped my skin." But he suddenly pushed my hand away. "I think you did it on purpose. Do you know what day it is today? It's my birthday. Aunt Serafina always knows how to buy me tasty treats and plays with me, while you just focus on work." My smile froze instantly. How could I have forgotten his birthday? Thinking back to this morning at the amusement park, I couldn't help but feel a sting in my nose and a sense of injustice. Before I could say anything, Caspian rushed up to me and pushed me hard. "Bad Mom, I hate you," he said. Even though he wasn't that strong, his words hit me hard. Serafina came over and stopped him, gently lecturing him. "Caspian, what did your aunt tell you? You need to be polite to your mom." Then, she looked up at me, an apologetic expression on her face. "I'm so sorry, Caspian. I spoiled him, and I apologize on his behalf." She acted like the lady of the house, treating herself as Caspian's mom, making me feel like the outsider. Caspian couldn't help but speak up, asking why Aunt Serafina had to apologize. After all, it was clearly her mistake. I bit my lower lip hard, trying to push down the frustration I felt. I shook the gift in my hand, forcing a smile on my face. "Caspian, Mom made a mistake. Look what I brought you. It's your favorite Ultraman." Seeing the familiar features that reminded me of him, I thought back to those moments when he'd received Ultraman toys before, the joy radiating from him as he nestled in my arms, my heart filled with anticipation. Those warm memories will always stay with me. But at some point, our relationship had soured into this awkwardness. After I spoke, Caspian jumped right into Serafina's arms, not caring at all. He shouted, "Who cares about your toy? Aunt Serafina can buy me 10 or 100. Once he yelled that at me, he ignored me and started working on a puzzle on the floor. As he pieced it together, he seemed to hit a snag, his little face scrunched up tight in concentration. Looking at his round little face made my heart ache, so I walked over and asked, Caspian, what part are you stuck on? Mom can help you. Who needs your help? Are you bored or something? I don't want you to touch my puzzle. I want Aunt Serafina. Hearing this, Serafina pretended to be angry and said, Caspian, your mom is just trying to help. Besides, she's smarter than me and can help you with the puzzle better. Just listen and show your mom your puzzle. With that, she reached for the puzzle to hand it to me. Caspian suddenly lost it, snatched the puzzle, and tore it in half with a loud rip. I didn't want her touching my stuff. I can't stand her. I don't want to see her. My throat felt so bitter that I couldn't speak. I wanted to reach out and hold his hand, but he pushed me away and then turned around to hug Serafina, crying his heart out. I want Aunt Serafina. I don't want Mom. I had no choice but to pull my hand back and quickly try to comfort him. All right, Mom won't bother you. Let Aunt Serafina stay with you. I don't want to leave him with any bad memories in the next 3 days. I just hope I can make him happy, and that would be enough. Serafina held Caspian and gave me an apologetic smile. Sorry, Caspian usually isn't like this. He might just be feeling a bit off today. After all, it's his birthday. I paused for a moment, then forced a slight smile, signaling that it was okay. She didn't need to apologize to me. The truth is, Caspian just doesn't like me, and that has nothing to do with her. I didn't expect Caspian to hate me this much. I can't even touch his toys. Just then, Orion came out of the bedroom, looking grumpy. Every time you come back, Caspian gets really upset. Can't you make some concessions? I can't believe Serafina, his own mother, handles things better than you do. Orion walked over, clearly dissatisfied, and stared at my bare arms. Also, don't expose your arms like that again. It might scare Caspian. I looked down, feeling embarrassed as I covered my scarred arm. A few days ago, Caspian had a fever. He got really mad because he didn't want to take his medicine and ended up knocking over the water cup. The glass shattered on the table, and the pieces cut my skin, leaving a pretty noticeable wound. Orion was there too. He saw everything but hasn't said a word to comfort me. Instead, he brought up my pain in front of our son. I quietly walked back to my room, and as I closed the door, I heard Caspian's cheerful laughter. It's great! That annoying mom is finally gone. My classmates' moms are so pretty. It's really embarrassing. I wish Aunt Serafina could be my mom. Orion glanced at Serafina and said with a smile, since you like Aunt Serafina so much, how about we have her pick you up from school in the future? Caspian immediately asked, really? Can we? Serafina glanced at Orion and smiled as she patted Caspian's head. Of course we can. In the room, someone sat curled up, holding their knees and quietly crying while listening to that painful conversation. It'll be soon, we'll be leaving, came the faint thought. Maybe exhaustion took over, and before anyone realized, they had fallen asleep. The next morning, the loud sound of the door slamming open jolted them awake. Mom, why are you still in bed? It's already 7. Normally, I'd definitely scold him for saying that, but right now, I just want to treasure these last few days together. What's wrong, Caspian? He just got up. His hair is a bit messy, and there's even a tuft sticking up on top. I was about to help him fix his hair, but he annoyingly pulled away. Today, Aunt Serafina landed a big project, and Dad's throwing her a celebration party. He wants you to come with us and bring a gift. Aunt Serafina is having a celebration party, and I need to buy a gift? I glanced at the date on my phone and couldn't help but laugh. Orion seems to have forgotten that today marks 10 years since we've been together. Maybe he has someone better in mind now, but that doesn't really matter anymore. I don't want to dwell on it. When I went downstairs, the 3 of them were already waiting for me. The moment I saw them, my mood was calm, yet I still felt a little thrill inside. They were all wearing matching colors, kind of like they were in family outfits. Caspian was grabbing Serafina with one hand and Orion with the other, bouncing around happily and looking really cheerful. Orion had a rare smile on his face, making them seem just like a perfect family. Watching their backs, a bittersweet feeling stirred inside, but I kept telling myself it was okay. Things would get better soon. Once we reached the restaurant, the 3 of them in their coordinated outfits instantly caught the attention of many guests. Several little girls gathered around Caspian. Such adorable little cuties, so charming. When Caspian heard the compliment, he was thrilled. He smiled at one of the girls and asked, "Do you think we look like a family?" "Of course! You're all in matching outfits, and you really look like your mom." I quietly glanced at Serafina. It seemed like she noticed my gaze, and she quickly said to me, "Caspian, don't worry about it. They don't know what's going on, so they misunderstood." After hearing that, the little girl seemed to change her opinion about us and hurriedly apologized. In the end, she and her friend looked at me with pity in their eyes. I smiled slightly and gently shook my head. Even though this kind of thing has happened many times before, it still breaks my heart every single time. Caspian is my own child, who I carried for 10 months, yet he always puts me down and humiliates me in front of others. Every mom would feel pain like this, right? So, I was feeling really down and couldn't focus on my food at all. Then, Orion slammed his glass onto the table, and it startled me. "If you don't want to eat, then don't come over. Who do you think wants to see such a sour face?" Caspian said, clearly upset. "Today is Aunt Serafina's big day for her project. Mom, could you please not give that look? It was already bad enough, and now it just looks worse. My classmates say you're not as pretty as Aunt Serafina." I've only been to Caspian's school once for a parent-teacher meeting. I was late that time because something came up. When I arrived at the meeting, I found out that Orion had already asked Serafina to come along. I saw Caspian excitedly telling his classmates how sweet and beautiful Aunt Serafina is. I intended to slip away quietly, but Serafina spotted me and called me over. Caspian noticed me too, and felt embarrassed in front of his friends, so he snapped at me. Reflecting on the past made me feel a wave of sadness. I gave Caspian an apologetic smile and said, "I'm sorry, Caspian. It's my fault for not keeping my emotions in check. I apologize, sweetheart." Orion looked at me with a hint of surprise. He thought I would lecture Caspian as I usually did. He really didn't like that about me. He often felt that my discipline, picked up from my time as an officer, even extended to my own child. But now, I had changed. Still, he couldn't resist mocking me, as if he thought it was strange to see me act differently. Without giving me another glance, he turned away and joined Serafina in playing with Caspian, trying to make him laugh. I sat there all alone, watching them enjoy themselves and share in the laughter. I felt like they were a happy family, and I was just an overlooked bystander. I don't know how much time passed, but I heard Caspian ask Serafina, "Aunt Serafina, how did you meet Dad?" He blinked his big, watery eyes, like a curious little kid eager to hear his parents' romantic story. Even though he was asking someone who wasn't his mom, I didn't really want to hear about how they met, but I ended up listening to their conversation anyway. I met Serafina shortly after Orion and I got married. At that time, Orion and I had just entered into a marriage arranged through a matchmaking service, and we didn't have a deep connection yet. Serafina is truly impressive. Even though she doesn't have a high degree, she works hard and has strong expertise in her field. Everyone thought someone as talented as her couldn't just be Orion's secretary. Yet, she not only stayed but also put in even more effort at work. After a busy day at work, it was obvious to anyone that there was a spark between her and Orion. On the day of the interview, she unexpectedly got her period. It was Orion who noticed and arranged for someone to bring her a fresh pair of pants. Still, Orion never acknowledged her feelings. He is quite traditional and believes that since he's married, he shouldn't act in a way that disrespects his family. So, Serafina is willing to stay on as his secretary, always by his side. They call themselves soulmates, just good friends at work. I lowered my head, my bangs hiding my watery eyes. "Dad, if you had met Aunt Serafina earlier, it would have been a romantic love story right out of a TV show." Caspian said that with a hint of regret, and his words felt like a sharp stab to my heart. Orion shot Caspian a mock-angry look, warning him silently not to say such things. I just smiled and didn't pay much attention. Caspian was right, it was all Mom's fault for getting in the way of Dad and Aunt Serafina's love story. I wanted to reach out and hold Caspian's hand, but he pulled away in disgust. It stung like a hard slap to the face. My hand hung in the air for a while before I slowly brought it back down. The meal felt bland to me, but their laughter kept ringing in my ears. That's okay. Seeing them so happy made it easier to leave. After dinner, I made up an excuse about having something urgent to attend to and strolled alone on the bustling streets. The city was alive with bright lights at night, but none of them were shining for me. I thought of Ophelia. When the call connected and I heard Ophelia's voice, tears immediately filled my eyes. "Caspian, Ophelia isn't there with you. Are you eating well?" "Ophelia, I could barely get the words out, my voice choked with emotion. She raised me since I was little. Even though she lives in a village thousands of kilometers away, she always seems to know exactly how I feel. Caspian, you've grown up now and you have your own thoughts. Don't worry. No matter what you choose to do, Ophelia will always have your back. You've been so understanding since you were little, which makes things much easier for me. I know you've always been chasing your own dreams, so, kiddo, if you want to pursue something, just go for it. From the very beginning, Ophelia never favored boys like some other families do. She always fought for me to go to school. Caspian, you should step outside this big mountain and explore the world out there. But remember, no matter where you go, Ophelia hopes you never forget your original dream. My dream is actually pretty simple. I just want Ophelia to get out of these mountains too. At the same time, my dream is also big. I hope all the girls in the mountains can escape the fate of being bullied. At that moment, I was in tears. I realized, Ophelia, you need to take care of yourself. Good girl, don't cry. Ophelia is doing okay, so don't worry. Ophelia, I've saved all the money I've earned over the years in your account. I'm getting divorced from Orion in the next few days. I don't care if he gets married again, all I care about is Caspian. Ophelia, please wait for me. I'll be back soon. I quickly hung up because I didn't want Ophelia to hear me crying and get worried. I wandered around the streets and didn't get home until it was well past midnight. Caspian was already fast asleep, but Serafina was still wide awake. Over the years, she had spent almost half her time at my place, using taking care of Caspian as an excuse. As I was about to head back to my room, I passed by Orion's bedroom and heard Serafina's voice. Orion, Valentine's Day is coming up. Can you spend it with me? My heart skipped a beat. Before Orion could respond, I hurriedly left the scene. Even though my heart was already aching, I still dreaded hearing the answer I didn't want to hear. Tomorrow was the day we'd set off, so I returned to my room to pack the things I needed. I left behind everything that reminded me of Orion. Those precious gifts that once meant so much to me, I didn't want to take a single one. The next day, as I was heading out, I happened to see Caspian getting ready for kindergarten. I decided to walk with him, thinking it would be a fitting way to say my final goodbye to them. When we got to the kindergarten and got out of the car, Caspian easily gave Serafina a kiss. Honestly, I felt a bit envious and a touch jealous. I wished I could get such a warm response from Caspian before he left. So, I walked over to him, opened my arms, and said, Caspian, can I have a hug? I didn't expect him to kiss me like he did with Serafina. I just wanted a simple hug. He didn't even glance at me. He walked straight up to Orion and said, Dad, it's almost time for class. I'm heading out now. His arms were spread wide in the air for a moment. Orion chuckled at the scene, teasing, since when did you get so dramatic? It's not like you'll never see me again. They just don't get it. For me, it really feels like a final goodbye. I forced a smile and pulled my hand back. When I got home for lunch, my ride arrived just in time. A colleague helped me with my luggage while glancing around. Caspian, is your family in the room? Go say a proper goodbye to them. We're in no rush. It's okay. Let's go. As we passed by Caspian's kindergarten, I saw her run to Serafina right after school. Her smile was just radiant. I haven't seen a smile like that in a long time. After we left, I couldn't help but wonder when I'd get to see Caspian again. My colleague driving was also concerned and asked me about it. Caspian, are you okay? I wiped the tears from my eyes. I'm fine. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes to rest, but all I could think about was Caspian. His laughter, his anger, his shyness, it all kept playing in my mind. I kept reminding myself that this is okay and that I need to learn to let go. I'm off to do what I want and chase my dreams. They've got their own loved ones to protect, which is nice. As I watched their little family, I silently whispered goodbye in my heart. The car sped away. However, just as my car brushed past theirs, Orion turned to look at me, a hint of confusion on his face. What's up, Orion? What's going on? Serafina asked him. Orion frowned, thinking he should have seen this coming. Suddenly, a bad feeling crept over him. He involuntarily shot me a message, only to find out he had been deleted from my friends list. The sting of being removed made Orion furrow his brow even more. He called, wanting to clear things up, but then realized I had blocked him. His face immediately turned pale. Orion, are you feeling okay? There was no time for a reply. He hurriedly left with Caspian to grab a bite to eat. I need to go home for a bit, he said before driving off. Once back home, he quickly opened the bedroom door, only to find it completely empty. He suspiciously checked every cupboard but couldn't find anything of mine. He stood there, lost in thought for a long time, as if time had stopped. Orion! When Serafina walked in, she found him sitting on the floor, looking dejected. He was clutching a piece of clothing tightly, his eyes vacant, and he kept mumbling to himself. Orion, what's wrong? Orion seemed to be lost in his own thoughts, repeating, no way. She loved that dress I gave her. There's no way she'd leave it behind. Absolutely impossible. Serafina looked surprised and asked, what, Caspian left? A smile crept onto her face. Out of nowhere, Caspian entered and snatched the dress, stepping on it casually. Dad, why are you upset about a woman like that leaving? He left, so he wouldn't disrupt our little trio anymore. Serafina could be my mom now. Caspian had said this many times before. This time, though, he finally sensed something was off. He pulled Caspian close and shouted angrily, who told you to talk about your mom like that? Caspian got scared by the outburst and couldn't hold back his tears. Orion saw him crying so hard and felt really annoyed. He shot a cold glance at Serafina. Didn't I tell you to take him out to eat? Caspian wanted you to be with him, Orion. What happened? Serafina watched him carefully. She didn't expect my departure would make Orion so jittery. What did all those years of hard work even mean? Caspian's voice dropped as he spoke, clearly scared, and he looked pleadingly at Orion. Dad, please don't be mad. I messed up. Orion took a moment to gather himself, wiped his tears casually, and took hold of Caspian's hand. Caspian, let's go to your mom's hometown. We can go find her, okay? Mom loves you so much. If you show her some affection, she'll definitely come back. Orion thought I was just being moody again. He figured that if he brought Caspian to me, I would soften up. Caspian didn't dare to say no, so he nodded. At Caspian's request, Orion brought Serafina along. A few days later, the three of them arrived at Ophelia's house. As soon as Orion walked in, he shouted out, Caspian, it's about time. We're here to take you home. Yeah, Mom, let's hurry back. Dad and Aunt Serafina are busy. Inside, Ophelia heard the commotion and quickly made her way out with her cane. Spotting her adorable great-grandson, she rushed to grab a lollipop. Caspian looked really annoyed and turned away without saying a word. What are you all doing here? Ophelia didn't seem upset. She glanced at Orion and then paused to look at Serafina. Orion's been getting more and more worried since I didn't show up. We're here to take Caspian home. But Caspian's not here. Didn't she tell you that? Ophelia thought she had mentioned it to them before I left, but now it seems like they really don't know. What are you talking about? Orion felt like Ophelia was teasing him and sounded a bit impatient. Noticing Orion's attitude, Ophelia calmly took a seat. Orion, over the years, Caspian has been a bit shy to say some things to you. Today, let me, as his wife, talk to you about it. Since Caspian has decided to leave, I fully support him. If after the divorce you think Caspian will affect your chance of remarriage, just send Caspian my way. Ophelia fixed a piercing gaze on Serafina. Also, my house doesn't welcome anyone who's not clean. I won't tell you where Caspian is, just know that she has gone to a better place. Ophelia's attitude really ticked Orion off, and he kicked over a chair in frustration. I don't even know where my wife went. Divorce? No way. She can't leave me. After that, Orion moved in with Caspian at Ophelia's place. Feeling awkward about her situation, Serafina had no choice but to find a cheap motel to stay in for a few days. She urged Orion to leave again and again, but he kept refusing, which only fueled her frustration. Orion, have you even thought about how I feel? What are you doing? Are you trying to win back Caspian? So what am I to you? I've been by your side for all these years, even helped take care of the kids, and yet I have no real standing. She knows how many people in the company are gossiping about her. Orion looks at her coldly. Serafina, it was you who wanted to stay by my side as my secretary. You said you were giving without expecting anything in return, just wanting to be with me. Plus, I'm paying you a lot more than others in the same position, so you're definitely not at a loss here. Serafina felt a wave of sadness wash over her. She didn't expect Orion to say that in front of Ophelia and the kids. It made her feel awkward. Caspian quickly stepped in front of Serafina and said, "Dad, don't be mean to Aunt Serafina." Orion was taken aback. He suddenly realized that, to Caspian, Serafina was already his favorite person, even more than his own dad. That made Orion angry. He yanked Caspian closer. "Caspian, have I ever told you how to treat your dad? If you were a bit nicer to your mom, she wouldn't leave us." Caspian felt so wronged that he started crying. But Dad said it himself. He said Mom isn't as good as Aunt Serafina, and Aunt Serafina treats me way better. Serafina was so angry that she didn't know where to go. Ophelia seemed determined to stand up for me. Instead of comforting the kid, she started shouting, "Orion, I finally get why Caspian had to leave today. My biggest regret is agreeing to let her marry you. You all saw it. Caspian isn't here at all. You can go now." Ophelia got up and forcefully pushed Orion and Caspian out the door, slamming it shut behind them. Orion lingered outside for a long time, hoping to see me, but I never showed up. It was only after Orion took Caspian away that Ophelia slowly opened the door, her eyes puffy from crying. The moment Orion got home, he sent someone to find me, eager to know all my whereabouts, but nothing came of it in the end. A week later, I finally thought of Talia. Even though Talia came up with plenty of excuses to avoid meeting, I still waited outside her office every day. Eventually, Talia had no choice but to meet him. "Talia, do you know where Caspian is? Please tell me where she is, and I promise I won't bother you again. She's my wife and the mother of my children. We can't lose her." Talia looked at the weary man with pity and replied, "Orion, I've heard about what you've done. Right now, Caspian hasn't made your situation public. All she's asked is for you to sign the divorce papers. That's actually showing you some consideration. Listen to me. Once you sign the divorce agreement, you can part ways on good terms." Talia knew I was doing this to protect Caspian from being looked down upon, so she gently advised Orion. However, Orion didn't care about that. His mind was only on getting me back. What did I do? I never even touched Serafina, let alone cheat. Why does she have the right to divorce me? If you don't tell me where Caspian is, I'll come here every day to ask you. Talia clearly wasn't afraid of him anymore. She had lost her patience and directly called security to have him removed. She insisted that he shouldn't be allowed back in. Still, he showed up at the entrance every day, looking around, hoping to catch a glimpse of me. But in the end, he found nothing. I seemed to vanish without a trace, nowhere to be found. Orion felt utterly helpless. I was gone, and Serafina didn't want to take care of Caspian anymore. He had to deal with Caspian's daily tasks all by himself, which drove him crazy. But what he didn't expect was Serafina suddenly quitting and taking half the key staff with her. It felt like all hope was lost for him, and he cried uncontrollably, holding Caspian tightly late into the night. Caspian felt really helpless. He tried to comfort his dad like he had seen his mom do before. "It's okay, Dad. Don't cry. I can buy you some candy." Hearing those familiar words just made Orion cry even harder. Crying wouldn't fix anything. He had to pull himself together, otherwise, he wouldn't just be unable to take care of his son, but he also risked falling into a lot of debt. Meanwhile, I was already settled in the countryside. Although this place is a bit poor, the scenery is really beautiful and the air is fresh. The villagers are genuine and warm, welcoming the new officials with open arms. I feel happy and believe I made the right choice. Instead of getting caught up in emotions in a big city, I'd rather contribute my value here. I'm committed to doing everything I can to help this village grow. Time flies. By the time I left the village, my hair was completely white. The villagers who came to see me off followed closely behind, their eyes filled with tears as they said their heartfelt goodbyes. Over the past 30 years, with my guidance, some people in the village have become wealthy, while others have achieved a comfortable lifestyle. The village has now shaken off poverty, looking fresh and new, keeping up with the pace of economic development. Everyone hugged me, expressing their reluctance to part ways. Mom. Just as I leaned in to hug the last villager, my heart skipped a beat. Caspian? I studied the person in front of me, feeling a bit uncertain. Caspian was crying uncontrollably, holding me tight and repeatedly saying he was sorry. For 30 years, every time he thought about how he treated his mom when he was a kid, he wished he could slap himself twice. How could he have caused such hurt to his own mother? Good kid, Mom doesn't blame you. I patted his shoulder and whispered a comforting word. Just then, an old man with a full head of white hair emerged from behind him. Mom, this is my dad. Do you remember him? I watched him approach me, unsteady on his feet. The wrinkles on his face told the story of time. With his head down, he seemed a bit anxious, unable to meet my gaze. Caspian, how have you been all these years? I'm doing well. I don't hate him anymore. In fact, I feel it's really something to raise Caspian all by oneself. I look around and ask, where's Serafina? Caspian seems a bit annoyed by the name. He frowns and replies, I don't know. She left after you did. Didn't your dad stay with her? I can't help but feel shocked. I thought that once I was gone, they would have no obstacles and could happily live together, hand in hand, for the rest of their lives. Mom, you have no idea. Not only did she leave, but she also took most of the employees from Dad's company with her. If Dad hadn't used the money you left behind to get back on his feet, we would have ended up homeless, like beggars. It's hard to believe that the Caspian who loved Serafina so much as a kid now feels such disgust at the mention of her name. I felt a mix of sadness and guilt. It was all my fault. After all, if I hadn't left him, he wouldn't have gone through so much pain. I didn't do enough as a mom. Caspian quickly shook his head and took my hand. Mom, don't blame yourself. I was too naive when I was younger and couldn't see things clearly. You know, when I heard you were named a role model of the times, I felt so thrilled and proud. I almost wanted to grab a megaphone and shout everywhere that I'm your son. I could really feel his pride in me. It was like a warm glow inside. With Caspian's encouragement, I took him and Orion with me to Beijing to accept the award. 30 years have gone by, and here I am, finally standing on a stage that everyone respects. I'm no longer that mom my son looked down on. What brings me the most joy is that I've been able to help many villagers and children break free from poverty. Now, I'd like to invite Ms. Caspian to say a few words. My throat feels a bit tight. Sometimes, we're like dandelions. We can float freely in the wind or take root like a sturdy tree. It's the thousands of dandelions, just like me, that bloom where my country needs them, which has led to such great achievements today. I hope everyone can chase their dreams and contribute, creating their own youthful legacy. When the applause started, I could almost see Ophelia smiling at me from the audience, looking so pleased. Not long after I got back from Beijing, I suddenly fainted. Caspian was crying really hard by my hospital bed. Mom, why don't you take better care of yourself? After being rushed to the hospital, the doctors diagnosed me with late-stage stomach cancer. My condition just kept getting worse, and there was no turning back. A lot of people came and went from my bedside. There were mayors and governors, as well as regular folks. They encouraged me and praised me. It got harder and harder to close my eyes, and my hands felt so weak. Caspian seemed to sense what I was thinking. She held my hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. Mom, please open your eyes and look at me. Mom, I've always wanted to say I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed you, and I shouldn't have said those hurtful things. Mom, I love you. Dad's really worried about you. Ever since you left, he can't eat or sleep well. He's lost a lot of weight in a short time. We all miss you so much. Please don't leave us, okay? His tears fell on my hand, and I tried my best to wipe them away. Then, I turned my gaze to Orion. It's time to let go, Orion. I finally said those words. I could tell he had been avoiding this issue, which is why he couldn't look me in the eye. Now, it was time to face it. After a long pause, Orion quietly replied, All right, I promise you. Under the watchful eyes of Caspian and me, he signed the divorce papers. After a while, we lost all contact. There's one more thing I need to figure out before I die. Ophelia helped me fix my hair. That day, Ophelia waited for your return, but you were caught in a flood on your way back and turned around to help the villagers. Ophelia left with a sense of regret, but she never blamed you. She just felt disappointed about her own weakness and wanted to see you succeed in your career with her own eyes. Ophelia, like us, is proud of you. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and it felt like her life was slipping away little by little. I am a child of the people, but I am not the good granddaughter in Ophelia's eyes. Over these 30 years of poverty alleviation work, I've hardly gone home to see Ophelia. I spent almost all my time in the mountains and for my country, forgetting that there was someone quietly waiting for me to come home in another mountain. Caspian noticed I was hurting, and he quickly wiped away my tears. I forced a smile, trying to reassure him not to worry. Caspian, your mom hopes you'll grow up to be a responsible and strong husband one day. Don't be sad. Don't forget me. Before I could finish, the room fell completely silent, and then suddenly erupted with heartbreaking cries. The truth is, true farewells are the ones that nobody remembers. I truly believe that I will always have a lasting place in the hearts of countless people in this country.